Kolten Wong was an unmitigated disaster, meaning the Mariners' second base situation was an unmitigated disaster as a whole for most of 2023. Give out our season grades for the position coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, October 12th, 2023. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON. You'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen, subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as their social accounts, is in the description of this episode. On the show today, our grades for the 2023 Mariners continue with a look at the dreaded second base position. And it seems we have even more of an indication that Teoscar Hernández won't return in 2024. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show. But Colby, we got to start here with our second base grades. And we got to start with the guy that held that position to start the season and was supposed to be the full-time guy, was supposed to be the answer there at a big problem area for the Mariners over the last few years since Robinson Cano was traded back in the winter of 2018. That's Kolten Wong. Kolten Wong was bad. Very, very, very bad. His slash line with the Mariners this year in 67 games, 165, 241, 227. Negative 1.1 F4. He was one of the worst players in Major League Baseball this year. So, gee, let me take a wild guess what grade you're going to give Kolten Wong.
F plus.
Okay.
Yes. Because let's not forget, he did single-handedly beat Lance Lynn and the White Sox with his heroic bunt single to get Lynn out of that ball game. He also should have had a game-winning home run against the Twins. Thanks, Andres. But yeah, aside from that, he was awful. He was really bad. So it's an F. It's a bummer too, because by all accounts, Kolten Wong is a really good teammate. He's a really good dude. He really worked very hard to try and solve his issues at the plate this year, and it just, the season just kind of collapsed on him, and the hole got so deep that he could never really dig himself out. So, yeah. It really is a bummer because, again, Wong seemed like a guy who's excited to be in Seattle. He was coming off of his best year offensively, at least at the plate, and everything that could go wrong just seemed to go wrong for him, and it just didn't work out. So it's a bummer. You certainly don't root for guys on your team to fail, but you also don't want, just good guys in general to have years this bad, because now Kolten's going to enter this offseason and he's going to struggle to find a major league deal. It's a bummer. He was able to find himself on the Dodgers playoff roster. So at least there's that. But yeah, it was a bad year. There's no question about it. And it's easily the worst year of his entire career. And it literally came out of nowhere. I know there are some of you out there who are claiming you knew that Kolten Wong was bad, but you're lying. So I'll say that straight to your face. You're lying if you thought Kolten Wong was going to be the worst offensive second baseman in baseball this year. You're a liar.
Yeah. So, we know that he was regressing defensively over the last couple of years heading into the season, but offensively, he had his two best seasons of his entire career. He was a 116 WRC plus guy a year ago in Milwaukee. That's the highest mark of his entire career. He ends up finishing with a 35 WRC plus in his Mariners tenure, ended up finishing the whole year at a 48 WRC plus, but 35 WRC plus from a 116 WRC plus. That's an 81% decrease. He was 81% worse.
Yeah, so if you're saying you saw that coming, you're full of something I can't say.
Right.
Because we're a family-friendly show. You're full of garbage. So, yeah. It's still an F. It was a disaster. But, yeah, certainly came out of nowhere. I don't think anybody, being honest, would have said that, they expected Kolten Wong to be 80% worse than he was last year. But that's the facts, and so it's an F. There's really no other grade you can actually give him. I mean, I don't think, even being as nice as you possibly could, F plus.
Yeah,
which isn't a thing.
It's as big of a disaster as you can possibly imagine here. The only thing that keeps me, because I'm giving him an F, but the only thing that keeps me from giving him an F minus 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 is that he at least wasn't a problem off the field, as far as I'm aware. So that's the only thing that could make it worse.
Depends on who you ask to speculate about that, but no, he wasn't a problem in the clubhouse. So, yep, just a real bummer of a situation. Kolten Wong is the guy that you want to root for, and it just didn't work out on any level, and it turned out to be pretty impactful. So it's a bummer, but it is the reality of what happened in 2023.
And then he goes to the Dodgers, and in a very small sample size, just 34 plate appearances, he put up a 300 batting average. He was a 130 WRC plus guy because, of course, Dodger magic, even though that didn't carry over to the NLDS, but that's a whole nother conversation. But, why do you think it didn't work out for him in Seattle? And then all of a sudden he was able to find some offensive success down in LA?
Well, there's a lot less pressure when you're the 26th guy for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who's already epically failed in Seattle, and you can feel kind of the pressure of the fan base starting to cave in on you. So part of it really is sometimes that, like, the hole just gets so deep that you just can't get out of it, no matter what you do, and it just you can't grip the bat tighter and expect to play better. So I don't know. I'm not a swing guy. I'm not analyzing Kolten Wong's swing. Why would I ever? He's never going to be a Mariner again. But I mean, I don't feel like his swing decisions were significantly worse. But again, I only saw him play for the 1 year, so tough to say. But I do think there is something to be said about just the mental block of going to work every day at the same place and just struggling and letting your teammates down, and then finally being like, okay, well, you go play for somebody else. And then you walk into the clubhouse, it's new. You haven't let these guys down yet. You just kind of relax. There's really not a lot of pressure because, your team's in the playoffs already. Your team's winning the division. You just trying to kind of, restart your career and put some good tape out there. And so I do think that, there is something to be said about, we kind of overuse the change of scenery argument a lot. But I do think there's something to be said about, like, walking into a clubhouse full of guys you haven't disappointed yet with no expectations placed on your shoulders whatsoever. That just kind of allows you to just go out there and just play ball. So I do think that is part of it, at least.
So we're going to talk about the other guys that made up second base, especially after it was made pretty clear that Kolten Wong wasn't going to be the answer there. We'll go over those guys in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Sleeper. All right, folks, the MLB playoffs are right around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Pick more or less on stats for your favorite players like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to a 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big, my friend. If things didn't go well in your home league this year, no worries. You can still salvage the fantasy baseball season over at Sleeper. There you can pick the players you want and call your shot. And when you use the promo code Locked On, that's LOCKEDON, you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. The other guys that made up second base, we're just going to kind of go in chronological order here. We're going to go with José Caballero because he basically took that position from Kolten Wong after it was made very, very clear that Wong wasn't going to be the answer there. Caballero was, I mean, he was amazing to start things off. I mean, he was hitting, he was stealing bases, he was playing decent defense, he was being utterly annoying at the plate against other teams. Like, he was a lot of fun. And then he finally came back down to earth, but he ends up being the 5th most valuable position player on the Mariners by F4, 2.2 F4, which, like we said with Mike Ford yesterday, probably says a lot more about the Mariners roster, the Mariners lineup than José Caballero in this situation. But he ends up finishing with the 2nd most stolen bases on the team. He had an overall a good year, especially when you consider the fact that you had no expectations for him going into the year. He was, the return in a very, very small trade involving Mike Leake a few years ago. I honestly forgot about José Caballero until, it was mentioned that he was coming up to the big league club. So what do you think about his year overall?
Yeah, certainly really important to the Mariners, because when he came up, he kind of single-handedly prevented Seattle from having the worst second base production in the history of baseball. So that's where he started. And then, of course, he crashed because he's a 27-year-old rookie who's, never played more than 90 games in a season. So, I don't think that was too terribly surprising. So, kind of like Mike Ford, this is a question of like, are you grading based on expectations, or are you just grading based on output and, performance and all that stuff? So it's based on expectations. It's an A+ because you got more from Caballero in 1/2 of a season than you probably thought you were going to get from him in his entire career. If it's just based on what he actually did this year, it's probably like a B+. Like, couldn't hit at the end of the year, even struggled to hit against lefties, although he was fine against lefties for most of the season. Made a couple major base running blunders, got picked off a few times when he really couldn't afford to, but also stole a lot of bags, got on base at a really high clip and played really good defense at second, filled in a little bit for JP when he went on the IL at short. Like, he's a nice player. And I think the Mariners should reward him by making sure he's in AAA to start 2024. But, it was a good year. I mean, there's really no question about it. Whether you want to talk about, just from expectation standpoint or actual production, either way, he helped you this year. I mean, 2 wins is an everyday player. Now,
Yeah.
Is José Caballero an everyday player? No, I really don't want him to be. But I think he's proven at least that he can provide value to, to Seattle or to a major league team. Coming off the bench or being, that kind of taxi squad guy between AAA and the majors. So, I think Caballero went from, we don't know anything about this guy, to having a pretty secure 40-man spot. I don't think there's really much danger of Caballero getting DFA'd off the 40-man, even if they have to make moves to, accommodate new players. So, that's a really good year for him. Again, I hope beyond hope that he starts next year in AAA, and we really only see him if there's an injury or a short-term call up. But if that is the case, and that's what happens when he comes up next year, you're going to feel okay. He's going to give you something. He's going to draw a walk. He can pinch run. He can play. Yep. He can play everywhere in the infield. Like, he'll give you something, which is, beyond what you could have expected, especially when he was literally just the return in a salary dump of a trade, 4 or 5 years ago. So it was a really good year for Cabby.
He ends up finishing the year with a slash line of 221, 343, 320. That's a 96 WRC plus, 2.2 F4, 23.6% K rate, 10% walk rate, 4 home runs. He had a couple of bombs, just absolute nukes that just came out of nowhere.
The Oakland
one, the one against
he had one against Atlanta. It wasn't a nuke, but
was it Boston? There was one that he hit in Seattle that was pretty stunning.
Yeah. It was like center field, right? Wasn't it like into the pen?
Yeah, I have it in my head. There's it was against a red team, but I can't remember what red team it was.
Red Sox?
I think it was the Red Sox. That's why I said the Red Sox, because I thought it was the Braves, but then I was like, no, they played the Braves in Atlanta this year.
Yeah. He did hit a home run against the Braves. It was his first career home run. It was a bit of a wall scraper. But yeah, the one in Oakland was one of I think the 4th or 5th farthest hit ball by the Mariners this year. Like, he
437 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like a 110 off the bat too. Like, not something that you thought Cabby was capable of, but Yeah, he had a very good season.
Yeah, very good year. So, with the context of like we had no expectations for him whatsoever, I think I'm gonna give him like an A minus, A, just kind of what I did with Mike Ford yesterday as well. I think overall on the whole, if there were expectations with him, it's probably more of like a C plus, B minus, B somewhere in there. But given the fact that you had no expectations of getting anything from this guy, and he was able to give you a 2-win season, A for me. So Josh Rojas was added, of course, at the deadline. He ended up becoming the primary second baseman for the Mariners from that point forward. He was splitting time with Dylan Moore, who we're also going to get to. But Rojas was pretty good. He was red hot during that run that they went on during the month of August, especially on that road trip when they went to Houston, Kansas City. He ends up finishing his time with the Mariners, 46 games played, 272, 321, 400, the 104 WRC plus. He was worth 1.2 F WART during that span. He kind of he got off to a slow start in his Mariners tenure. Again, like got hot during that stretch in August, and fell off a little bit again, and then was able to contribute towards the end of the year. So
He stabilized.
It's a mixed bag from Rojas, and he had some issues defensively. I mean, that game in Tampa Bay really sticks out.
Sure.
But mostly isolated issues defensively. He was fine, but he's probably better suited over at third base. But what do you think about, or what did you think about his 2 months in Seattle?
Solid B.
Yeah.
I don't think you can give him anything less. Hit for average, solid on base. That's about league average, with about league average power, which is not something that Rojas has typically produced. He's not a home run guy, and yet he, was pacing out for about, 15 to 20 home runs, somewhere in that range, if he played the entire season in Seattle. And you talk about the slow start. He was coming off of a long injury layoff. So, I mean, Rojas, in essentially what 30% of a full season was almost, a 1.2 win player. So you do the math, he's close to a 4-win player since he got to Seattle. So I think it's a solid B. The defense I felt like got better the more he played over there. He's not, he's not a black hole. It's not like you're starting Ty France at second base and praying to God nobody hits the ball to him. He's fine. He is, probably, fringe average at second right now. He's much better at third, but you feel fine with him at second. You feel fine with him at third. You feel fine with him in the lineup 4 or 5 times a week. And he's going to give you something, he'll struggle like everybody does, but for the most part, he's going to give you a good at bat. He's got some pop that he's finally getting to here, and he's a real solid player. So I think there's a possibility, in 6 months, we're talking about is Josh Rojas the secret key to the Mariners season? Or we could just easily be like, man, the Mariners really flipped Josh Rojas for that. Wow. Cool. Right. Rojas is a good player, and he had a pretty good run with Seattle last year. So I'm going to give him a B.
Yeah, I'm going to go B plus on him as well.
Yeah.
And I think that he can be a legitimate part of this thing moving forward, either as a part-time second baseman, part-time third baseman,
Marlon
kind of
Gonzalez.
Ideally, I would like Josh Rojas to be what Dylan Moore has been for you the last couple of years, because he can also play a corner outfield spot if you need him to. He's played some left field in the past, so
Marwin Gonzalez. That's who you want Josh Rojas to be. That's his ideal role. So
speaking of Dylan Moore, it's hard to assess his year because he had core surgery during the off season. Then he gets rushed back and then has a bunch of setbacks and finally gets on the field and really doesn't look like he's in baseball condition. Like he's able to play Major League Baseball, and then he gets really hot there for like a couple weeks. And that's kind of doing the heavy lifting here for his numbers in total. 207, 303, 428. That's a 105 WRC plus over 67 games played, 0.7 F4. He struck out 34% of the time this year, though. 9.7% walk rate, 19 RBI, 7 home runs, 7 stolen bases. weird year for Demo, and again, I feel like he needed way more time down in the minors before he was called up. So again, overall, yeah, bad year for Demo, or at least a pretty mediocre year for Demo, but I also blame a little bit of it on the organization for rushing him back. I just think the way that they handled him in general and the way that they built their roster banking on him coming back was really, really, really disappointing. But
Sure.
I think I'm leaning towards like C- here for Demo, D+.
You've always been a Demo simp.
Right.
Longtime Demo hater here standing up.
Right.
Yeah, he went like 4 for his last 50 down the stretch. Remember how we talked about like how he was going to be really important in those last 10 games because you were facing a ton of lefties? He sucked. Like, he was bad. So because he had the offseason surgery, I'll be nice and I'll give him a D- for Dylan Moore. The D, of course, standing for Dylan, the minus, of course, standing for his overall value to the Seattle Mariners.
Right. Yeah. So from about July 22nd to August 20th, so about a month, he was pretty good. But outside of that, he was dreadful. Utterly dreadful.
Shouldn't be anything more than the 26th man on your team.
Yeah, this is another reason why I say like Josh Rojas should be your new Dylan Moore, essentially. It shouldn't be Dylan Moore again in 2024. If anything, if Moore is on this roster, he should be what Sam Haggerty has been to you. That should be the role that he's filling. But yeah.
He should be the 4th guy on your bench.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so we have been working under the assumption that Teoscar Hernández was not coming back to the Mariners in 2024 in some capacity, whether they give him the qualifying offer and he takes a contract elsewhere, or they don't give him the qualifying offer and just completely wash their hands of him, whatever. But now it seems like we've gotten even more of an actual tangible indication that that relationship might be ending this offseason. We'll go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Jase Medical. Modern medical care and treatment are important, but our global supply chains are fragile. Things like pandemics, natural disasters, and foreign travel may cut you off from the treatment you need. Jase Medical is your solution for that. Just fill out our online form and one of our board-certified physicians will review it to determine whether medications are safe and appropriate. Then they will send your prescriptions to one of our partner pharmacies where your Jase order will be filled and mailed directly to your home. Everyone should feel empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical plus an additional $20 off by using the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So, headline, Teoscar Hernández liked a tweet. That's right. We're playing Twitter detective on today's show, folks.
You are.
Yeah, sure. Teoscar Hernández liked a tweet from what many are assuming is a member of his family. Not sure, if it's a brother, dad, or uncle, or cousin, whatever. But this tweet from an account with the name José A. Hernández, which said, in Spanish, a new house is required. That was in response to a tweet from Teoscar's agent, Rafa Nieves, who posted his home and away splits, which are, not good. Like he was bad at T-Mobile Park this year and pretty good on the road. So the fact that his family is responding to that, the fact that his agent has posted that tweet and has talked about how poor he played at T-Mobile Park, and the fact that Teoscar is liking tweets that are talking about that seems to indicate that Teoscar doesn't want to play in Seattle any longer. At least to me, just trying to read between the lines. Colby, I know you love stuff like this. Tell us your thoughts on
that. What's a 5-letter word for one of the Hawaiian Islands? Plain crossword. I mean this in the most sincere way possible. I do not care. Like one bit.
That is a shocking response.
I literally, I have nothing else to say. I don't care. Teoscar Hernandez isn't going to be here next year. That was probably the case anyways. Who cares? Who cares? Teoscar wants to blame T-Mobile Park because he couldn't hit. Okay, fine. That's a you problem, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, I'm sure T-Mobile Park really contributed to the 32% strikeout rate that he ran at the ballpark.
Yeah, whatever. Agents are going to blame whatever they can instead of the player because they're trying to get him the most money. The player is going to believe it because it's a lot easier than believing that, oh no, maybe I'm a player who's, hit 30 and I'm on the decline now. I don't care. I don't. There is
You made that abundantly clear.
There is nothing about this that we should be talking about. I hate it when we go, oh, somebody likes so-and-so's tweet, so obviously that means that, I don't care. Stop sending me your screenshots of who liked Ty France's Instagram post. I don't care. This is nothing. And we're going to do it every single freaking day this winter, because, somebody's going to go to Driveline and we're going to be, oh my God, is he visiting the Seattle Mariners? No, he's just here. Stop it. I don't need
Many
to know
guys
Mark
go to
Canna,
Driveline.
I don't need to know what kind of soup Mark Canna like. I don't care. Put the pen to paper. Then I'll care. This is so stupid. I get you guys are thirsty for baseball news, but stop. Have some self-respect for yourself. Good. I spent like an hour last night trying to find the perfect trade package for like a fourth outfielder. Okay. And that's less pathetic than us talking about this right now. This is pointless. We don't even know if this guy's related to Teoscar Hernandez. And even if he is, who cares? I don't care. Goodbye, Teoscar. I wish you luck in your new stop. Maybe it's still here. I don't care. Maybe it's somewhere else. Either way, I don't care. This tweet doesn't mean anything. Stop it. Have some self-respect for yourself. Good Lord. This is garbage. This is the worst part of not playing playoff baseball. It's not that you're not actually playing. It's that we have to respond to stuff like this and be like, oh man, we need a breaking news segment. Make some new music, Ty. We need a banner. Like, we'll just oh my God, somebody tweeted something that a player liked. Oh, good Lord. Stop the presses. Who freaking cares? And I'm not saying another word on this episode.
That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.